All right. Oh, looks like we're both recording. Perfect.
Oh, cool.
So I will dive into the state. I'll see you at the end. Have a fantastic time.
Appreciate it, Tyler. Have a good one.
It is out of species highest joy and passion to be able to have this particular interaction with you this evening of your time. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ryok. How are you doing?
We are delighted to be able to explore with you in this way. How would you like to proceed together?
I want to start off with a really simple question. I know it doesn't matter too much because it changes all the time, but I've just been curious. Can you give me a reading of my current frequency?
Well, the idea is your frequency fluctuates as you encounter different themes, different challenges, different people. For understand, each parallel reality that you shift through will be a unique manifestation based off of many different components that combine together to make up what you would understand as your superficial frequency. The superficial frequency is different than what we call the signature frequency. The signature frequency is essentially an infinite number value because your true self is the divine source, all that is. So in a sense, it cannot really be measured, your true signature frequency. Now the superficial frequency does shift for yourself as we're scanning into it. It ranges, one moment, between 153,000 cycles per second and 173,000 cycles per second as an estimate, as an approximation.
Right.
And the idea is this type of frequency range allows for you to experience blissful states, high frequency states, and it also allows for you to ground them in practical ways. When the frequency is incredibly high on what you would consider to be the superficial level, sometimes individuals whom are in that type of state will have many mystical experiences, many types of divine encounters. However, what ends up happening is the grounding of those things isn't really as available because the frequency is so high. So when you bring the frequency back down, which is more connected to what you would call the earth energy, it allows for you to crystallize the frequency so it becomes a living part of you rather than just a fantastical type of experience that is more what you would call astral in nature. So the lowering of the frequency is taking those astral higher dimensional experiences and then solidifying them into your physical reality.
Very interesting. Okay. So I'm going to switch topics here a little bit. Last time we spoke about 8 or 9 months ago, I believe. And one of the things I asked about was telekinesis. And you had given me some exercises that I could do. And I tried to apply those, but I haven't gotten much success. Am I just not doing it long enough? Like, how long would it typically take to learn telekinesis to the point where I can move objects in front of other people, not just by myself?
Well, the idea is to allow for yourself to utilize the techniques that resonate the most with you, because different techniques will have varying levels of efficacy. So the techniques that you feel the most resonant with will ultimately be the ones that allow for you to accelerate in relationship to developing that skill. Now, there are different ways you can achieve telekinesis that may be a little different than what you are used to. There are some forms of telekinesis that may appear to be slightly martial in nature. And what I mean by that is the beings on your planet whom have developed the technique that we are about to share practice not only energy arts, but what you call martial arts and blended the two. The idea being that energy can be directed through your body, and in particular, through your hands. In general,
this is what I've been trying lately.
Yes, exactly. You
Yeah.
are following the intuitive thread, the trail. The hands are designed to guide energy. And you can course energy through the hands, and the energy can then be projected for all types of different purposes. Now understand the energy can also be projected for object movement without physical touch, what you call telekinesis. Now, there's a few different ways to do this. An easy object to work with is what you would consider to be a balloon. This may be something that serves you. You can tie the balloon down a little bit, so that way the balloon seems to be suspended in the space without having it float up to the ceiling. Have it at a comfortable level. And the idea is practice directing energy through your arm, out your hand, into the balloon. At first, what is advisable is that you practice very slowly, very relaxed, with no expectation or insistence that the balloon needs to move. Simply inhale from your heart center, down your arm to your hand. You can use an open hand or what is called the sword finger mudra, and then exhale from the hand into the balloon. Once you have practiced this sufficiently and you feel you understand how to direct energy, you can then intensify how you channel it. And this is where it gets a little martial. For example, you can allow for yourself to make a fist if you wish. And the idea is inhale down the arm into the fist, hold the breath, visualizing the fist glowing with the energy. And the idea is when you exhale, not to do a slow exhale, but what you would consider to be more of a martial exhale, imagining, visualizing that all of that energy or chi you've charged the fist with is then projected like lightning into and through the balloon. The through part is key here. That's what will create the idea of what you might consider to be the movement effect, because the energy projected through the balloon will then cause a vibrational shifting in the balloon, which will alter the locational variable, the locational frequency. So we shall demonstrate it loosely. And remember, this is something that can take some time to get used to, and there are individuals on your world that specifically teach these types of things. So you may actually benefit from training with someone, but what we're sharing here is an appropriate, let's just say, model, basic beginning model to develop an awareness of the method and the technique. So the idea would be to make the fist loose at first, inhaling white, for that is a very balanced color, but you can play with other ones. Begin with white, however. Inhaling down the arm, holding, charging the fist. And when you are ready to discharge the energy, put your mind into and through the balloon and send it through. Over time, that will create stronger and stronger effects as you internalize the energy. Many of you, simply because of the materialistic dimensions of your reality, have become slightly numb to what you would call the energetic, the etheric, the astral dimensions. But as you train in these particular skills, you reawaken that awareness within you. So the energy world becomes just as real as your physical one. When you begin to access that level, the technique's power will increase more and more and more. Does this make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it kind of parallels some of the stuff that I've been experiencing while trying some techniques that I've just been doing intuitively by using my hands and visualizing energy coming out of them. But I haven't been visualizing the energy going through the object. I've been using slightly heavier objects, not a balloon, and a handful of other things that I think might be impeding me. So this is really, really good. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
So along the same line of skills like that others would consider maybe supernatural, how do I break the continuity of physical reality? I had asked this question during one of your live Q&As, and you had said to use the imagination. But to me, imagination it's just this ephemeral thing in my mind. It's not solidified in my actual experience. I can imagine anything I want, but I'm not actually experiencing it. How do I bridge that gap?
But
And
you
how do
are.
I?
But you are. You're just not experiencing it on a purely physical level. You're experiencing it on a level that, again, most of you have become a little numb to because of the materialistic qualities of your cultures.
So how do I experience it on a physical level?
The idea is to internalize the feeling state that is behind the imagining. So as you go into the imagining and really vividly picture it, begin to then see and sense past the picture into what you would consider to be the emotional or feeling qualities that underlie the picture you are visualizing. Tune into those qualities, the feelings connected to your visualization. Imagine that those feelings are energetic light. You can again use white light. And once you've really tuned in to the underlying feelings behind the visualization, breathe that white light into you, visualize it, picture it coming into your body with every breath. See your whole body being filled with white light from the bottom up with every breath until you are glowing with white light. Continuous practice of that ilk will allow for you to experience directly that your imagination can create physical effects, because you will feel physically different from that particular exercise if done sufficiently. The other thing we would encourage you to pay attention to are the belief systems related to your imagination. Because yes, the imagination, which is connected to the astral realm, is like water. It is moving, it is changing. And as you know, sometimes water can create what you call optical illusions. So not everything that you observe in the astral realm is literally accurate in physical reality. Much of it is symbolic, like your dream world. So that dimension of the astral realm does exist, what you call a more ephemeral or transient component. However, there are dimensions of the imagination and the astral realm that accurately reflect the physical reality. And as you believe in your ability to create real effects from the imagination, you then begin to emphasize that dimension of the imagination, and your imagination will then serve you in relationship to consciously creating your reality. We also remind you all things you have ever manifested in your life first began as ideas within your imagination. And this is, again, more evidence that your imagination does in fact create the physical reality. Without an imagination, you do not receive ideas. The imagination is the channel that ideas will utilize to reach you. Even when you say, oh, well, I use my intellect to do that, you have simply imagined that your intellect is what generated the concept, because all things are your imagination. Every word I am speaking, you have imagined on some level prior to this actual conversation. So understand, the imagination is key. It's simply learning to work with it and learning how to speak its language so you can become fluent in that dimension of exploration.
Okay. I know it can fluctuate, and there's different efficacy based on the technique that I might use and some of the stuff that you've outlined here, but can you give an estimate of how long I would have to do this if I was practicing it, say, several times a day and truly believing?
If your only goal is to create a skill that is, let's just say, interesting, it may take you a long time.
This is my burning passion. It's not an idle curiosity. I want to show people what's truly possible to do in this life.
Well, remember, you're already doing that through you following your joy and your passion in all other areas. Now, of course, yes, you can crystallize these types of skills, and yes, it can be revealing. Yes, it can show people what is possible. But remember, in order for people to truly receive that from you, they must also be at a level where they believe they are capable of receiving that. But as you know, many extraordinary things have been demonstrated, sometimes on live television, sometimes in private groups, and individuals that are not ready to receive it oftentimes will label it as fraud. And this is not to say that all of these things are fraudulent. However, that can be the response or reaction to individuals whom are exposed to those things. and are not in a place to really receive them. So one of the things we will emphasize is many of these abilities that have been called siddhis in your yogic culture are side effects of individuals ascending. And all that means is raising their frequency to a level where they begin to merge consciously while alive with what you call all that is. And the idea being that when an individual internalizes the frequencies of all that is, they become capable of the miraculous. Remember, that's where these things come from. They don't come from the lower self. They do not come from the human intellect, even though these things can be utilized to create the miraculous in different ways. What you call the miraculous comes from that core self, true self level that translates as all that is. So if you truly desire to access what you call divine power, that's where your attention ought to be focused. For understand, without really crystallizing and internalizing that particular connection, the skills that are developed will, in a sense, take longer, and they will not have the same type of power behind them. Individuals have cultivated these types of skills without really tuning into that connection. However, what ends up happening for those individuals is what is known as energetic depletion, because they are relying on what you would consider to be a limited reservoir of energy. They are drawing upon the energy of what you would call the physical reality, where you experience the concept of limitation. However, when the energetic source comes from what you call all that is, or the divine, that is an unlimited type of energy. It's infinite. And it connects you to the infinities that exist across the infinite parallel realities that you experience. So when that becomes the focus, internalizing the frequencies of all that is, you become capable of many of these things and more at a much more accelerated rate. Because understand, the utilization of these skills requires the belief system that these skills are possible. And in order to really not just believe, but to know that these skills are possible, you must be in resonance with the consciousness of all that is, because that's the level where all things are possible, where all things can be shifted and changed. Does this make sense?
This does make sense, and it actually it resonates with some experiences that I've had on particular psychedelics, where I've experienced oneness, unity consciousness, what I would consider to be possibly fifth dimensional consciousness at various levels. And I had asked you about this previously about psychedelics, where you had said it's possible to experience those effects without the substance, and Bashar has talked about this as well. Can you give an exercise for crystallizing that experience? Because if I do it with my eyes closed, I feel like I can get 10, maybe 20% of the way there, but it doesn't really trigger the full-on experience.
Well,
that
it's
I've
not
had.
supposed to trigger the full-on experience because you're not taking an external drug. Remember, when you take a drug, you are placing chemicals into different receptors in your nervous system that dramatically alter your chemistry. When you are utilizing the imagination to create this effect, it's much more subtle because you're using energy to fill those receptors. You're not using a hard chemical. Not to say psychedelics are hard drugs by any means. We just mean that the chemical is more solid, it's denser. So a denser substance is filling the receptor site. Where when you use the imagination, you're working with chi or prana or ki, whatever you want to call it, to fill that receptor site. So the effect is not supposed to be identical. It's subtle. That's why they call it subtle energy. So the effects will be more mild, but through stabilizing the frequency, through practicing being in the frequency in both positive and negative situations, it then becomes internalized, and that will upregulate what you call dimethyltryptamine production in your body endogenously, which ultimately will enable the effect to become more and more and more and more and more pronounced over time. The idea is to become devoted to that state of oneness, Give yourself to that state of oneness, because understand what you call your human suffering or your pains as a people all come down to the idea of resistance to that oneness. So as you allow for yourself to consciously merge with it, to choose it, you will then find your normal waking state becomes even more blissful and even more revealing than what any psychedelic compound could reveal to you. Because at that point where you have internalized the state, you will then be allowing for your own body to produce a version of that state that is natural and is synergistic to who you are as an individual. When an external psychedelic is consumed, while it can reveal that state, it is a state that is revealed through something that is, in a sense, other. Therefore, it will not be 100% synergistic with you. But when you yourself make the state, there is perfect synergy, and it becomes quite easy to internalize and will quickly gain momentum as you increase your devotion or focus or relationship with it. Does this make sense?
It does make sense. And that is kind of where that is absolutely where my focus has been these past several months, is on unity consciousness and exploring the idea of oneness and considering others just, more facets of myself, and considering myself to be the entire reality that I'm a part of. All of those concepts. And I thought I was doing something wrong by not being able to trigger the full-blown effects through imagination. I thought I was maybe blocking it somehow, but it seems like I need to practice more and not set those expectations. Is that accurate?
The idea is, don't care what happens at all. Abandon all care about the effect. Simply do it because it's curious. Simply do it because it's interesting. And let that be enough. Otherwise, the expectations will actually block the effect. And the expectation that it must feel the same way as the external psychedelic actually limits what you're capable of experiencing through the imagination. Now, if you wish, there is an exercise we can begin to share with you at this time that can assist you in exploring more of that non-dual awareness. And if you wish, we can begin. However,
yes,
if you wish.
Absolutely.
All right. Begin to simply pay attention to your breathing. Noticing the sensation of the air coming in, and noticing the sensation of the space in the body being filled by the breath. Exhale, follow the breath back out through the nose. Inhale, awareness of inner space. Exhale, follow the breath out and become aware of the outer space around you. Inhale, aware of the inner space. Exhale, aware of the outer space. Let your mind follow the breath out of the body a little bit and detect the outer space around you. Inhale, feel the space as well. Exhale and feel the space around you. Now, as you inhale and feel the inner space, maintain an awareness of the outer space. So inhale, fill the inner space while feeling the space around you. And as you exhale, simultaneously become aware of the inner space and outer space. Continue this dual awareness with each respiration. Let us do 3 more breaths with this focus. And now, as you do this and maintain the awareness of inner and outer space, with every breath, begin to imagine that your awareness of a physical boundary, the body, particularly the surface level, the skin level, begins to become less obvious to you. In a sense, turn the volume down on your sense of a physical boundary as you breathe. So inhale, feeling the physical boundary, in a sense, getting quieter. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Almost like you are becoming mist, merging with the space around you. Feeling yourself becoming the room you are in. As you exhale, take a moment to notice and think of the objects in your space very lightly. Just think of the contents of your room as you exhale. And as you become aware of these objects on the exhale, notice the space within the objects. Feel the underlying spatial quality that exists within your body, within the room, and within all objects, all people that you will ever encounter. You all share the quality of space. Inhale. Exhale. And now, become aware of, again, the sensation of the respiration, the expanding of the lungs. Begin to imagine as you breathe, the whole room breathes with you. Inhale. Exhale. The whole room is you. You are all the objects. You are all the things within your space. Inhale and feel everything breathe in unison. Exhale. And now open your eyes slowly, just a little bit, not fully. We're continuing the exercise here. Gently open the eyes. Continue to maintain that awareness of everything breathing with you as you now introduce vision into the exercise. And now rest, close your eyes once more and just feel. Inward listening, inward sensing.
It almost feels like I'm tripping right now.
Exactly, yes. This is the same level that many of these compounds bring you. This is the endogenous way of creating it. It's one of many ways, and you will find more methods come to you from your own higher mind as this is practiced. The key is to do this exercise consistently 3 times a day for no more than 5 minutes. A session will be sufficient. After you have done it, just take a moment to rest, just feeling and listening inside. And what you'll find is when you then open your eyes and go throughout the day, that sense of you being everything in the room will remain active. You're right now creating what you would call energetic muscle memory. So this is the early stages, but as this is internalized, that state of oneness will become quite consistent.
Okay, very cool. Thank you for that.
Yes, you're very welcome.
And this leads, I've noticed every time I talk to you that you have a knack for your answers leading directly to my next question.
Yes. All we're doing is riding the wave of synchronicity. That's all.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
How can I believe, or realize rather, how can I realize that I am fifth density right now?
Well, remember, fifth density represents non-physical reality. You are all densities because you exist on all levels. So, for example, when you close your eyes and you become aware of the inner space, which is in a sense non-physical, right? It is space. There is still a you aware of that non-physical space, yes?
Yes.
That's actually you connecting to the fifth density level. That's you connecting to the non-physical level. That's actually what we just did. Through connecting to the spatial element, you're connecting to fifth density through connecting to non-physicality. If you didn't exist on that level already, you would not be able to feel the exercise we just did at all. But because a dimension of you exists on the fifth density level, when you tune into the space, you can perceive it, because you cannot perceive something you are not a vibrational match to. So if you're perceiving a non-physical awareness and sensation, that means you contain the fifth density, the fifth dimension within you. Does this make sense?
Yeah, that does. Also, just a side note, I'm actually getting some very minor visuals right now, which has never happened to me while trying to experience the psychedelic effects without the substance before. I'm actually getting some shimmering around the edges of certain objects right now, which is really cool.
Exactly. You recall the term we used earlier, the astral realm?
Yes.
As you work with that fifth density energy, you automatically begin to activate what you call your astral senses. This is what you're perceiving. It's a bit of an overlay sensorial effect. It's you blending the astral and the physical reality in a conscious way.
Very cool. So this is something that has, my next question, this is something that has stuck with me for a while. I've watched a lot of Bashar, and I believe that I'm worthy of abundance and joy and all these wonderful things. Yet I still feel like it's too good to be true. I feel like I have to put in all this hard work, even though I know that that's not necessarily the case.
Have you experimented with doing the opposite, doing less?
Not for things that I'm passionate about, I guess, because I feel like it's not going to happen for me still. I still have that belief that says that it's not possible to do these certain things.
Well, one of the best ways to really get in touch with what you ultimately believe is to experiment. So begin to believe in what you prefer instead, and then take action on it. Gentle actions, baby steps, go at whatever pace is appropriate, but begin to buy into the new belief system and take actions that represent it. Because if you hold on to the belief system that is old and outdated, and you only reinforce that through your actions, you're just going to get more of that, and it will seem more and more real. And any other alternative that is presented to you will begin to seem more and more and more fictitious, because you're resonating with that old belief in such a way where it begins to then densify as your physical experience. So gently begin to transition yourself into a new way of exploring abundance, wealth, prosperity, and these types of things by selecting belief systems that are empowering in relationship to material manifestation. For example, you can create all types of beliefs that serve you. For example, the belief system, money is something I receive simply for being myself, can create all types of financial opportunities that may actually be much more expansive than the ones you have created utilizing the more outdated definitions. So really get creative here and explore how you would prefer to define money and abundance, and create appropriate definitions that really resonate with those preferences and begin to act on them. For example, money is something I receive simply for being me may translate into you offering a service that you are passionate about, offering a skill set that you are passionate about. And there is
something that I'm very passionate about. This is something I spoke a little bit about when we talked previously, and it's something that I know could be joyful for me, I know could be very abundant for me. And it comes down to competitive gaming. It's something I'm very passionate about. And I have this belief that I'm the best in the world at a particular game. And I've experienced being the best in the world at that game while on psychedelics. But in my normal waking state, it's like I can't access that skill set. Like I can't believe that I'm that good because I feel like I haven't put the work in.
One moment. Recognize those things you've spoken are literally the belief systems that are creating that experience of being incapable of performing at a peak level. What you just spoke aloud, those are the things to let go of. You just revealed to yourself the underlying definitions. So everything you just spoke, we would encourage you, listen to once more in the recording of this. And if it serves you, practice letting them go. For example, you can inhale love, joy into yourself with your breath. And on your exhale, think of the earth, and exhale into the earth the qualities of being incapable. You can see it as a black energy, a gray energy, if you wish. See it going right into the earth, being broken down and transformed into positive healing energies. You can even imagine it transforms into soil, healthy soil for your planet.
I just got emotional at the thought of doing that.
Yes, yes. This represents your shamanic connection to the earth. And any quality, without exception, that you desire to release, you can hand over with your exhale to the planet. It will transform it into something beautiful, like flowers. So anytime you say, I really wish I could let go of this belief, I can't seem to release it, choose to surrender it to the planet. You can do 10 breaths, releasing the belief. You can do 20 breaths, however many you need. At a certain point, you'll go to do the exercise, and you'll say, wait a minute, there's nothing to release. I've actually shifted. I've made the change. I now believe I'm capable. And a matter of fact, I know I'm capable. And at that point, you have fully shifted to the new parallel reality that represents what the psychedelic state showed you.
That would be incredible. I want to believe that. I really do. So hopefully with those exercises, I can really not just believe it, but know it.
Exactly. Consistency is key. If you are consistent in these things and you believe that they can serve you and are serving you, they can then work for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Completely shifting topics here. I had a minor, very minor psychotic episode a couple months ago. And during that, briefly, for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, I channeled Bashar, and I was channeling Bashar for my dad, and I heard Bashar's voice. I had his mannerisms. My hands were in the same place that Daryl's are when he channels, and it all felt like it was flowing through me. Did I actually channel Bashar? Did I just imagine that? What was that?
A blending. And what we mean by this is you utilized the frequency of Bashar to create what is known as a simulacrum, which is a blending of different energies. So what you are channeling, in a sense, is your own Sasani counterpart, and you have blended that counterpart with your own persona, which is all channeling is. All channeling is matching the frequency of another intelligence, and you form, in a sense, a third entity, and that is what you call the channeled personality. So what's coming through the channel in front of you is not purely me, the being many of you call Ryok. It is not purely the being you call Tyler. It is a blending of the two. So utilizing the symbol of the being you call the Bashar, you were able to access the Sasani frequency, which allowed for you to access what you would call your oversoul connections to members of my society. So you then, from accessing your own personal oversoul link, then blended with it, and that blended persona, that blended perspective is what was then shared. Now, recognize that utilizing the energy of the Bashar does involve the Bashar in the process. However, most of that Sasani frequency was connected to your own personal oversoul link to a member of my people.
And that leads yet again to my next question. I've tried to channel a little bit on my own, and right now it still just feels like it's all in my imagination. It feels like nothing's really happening, so to speak. But I did get a name, and that name was Rima that came to mind, and it's kind of stuck around and has its own energy tonality to it. So I feel like there's something there. Can you expand on this?
Yes, think of the name as a phone number. So when the name is vibrated or is used as a type of mantra, it's like dialing that being. For example, inhale. Again, feel the sound go into the space. As you begin to do this, picture the being that you're desiring to connect with. As you see them before you, inhale and see them glow, and then vibrate the name. Rima. Continue that process for about 10 breaths. And when you see the being before you glowing with light, hold your hands out and breathe them into you, internalize them. Imagine again, they convert into light and are absorbed by you. This is a blending technique. This will allow for you to internalize that intelligence that you call the entity. So it will dissolve the sense of separation between you and the entity. So you will become one and the same. So when you then go to channel the entity, you will be channeling yourself. And it will feel much more natural. It will come through much more clearly. When you see the entity as other, you then create what you would call unknowns. Things you cannot perceive, things you cannot see. And because of their species relationship to the unknown, that can create insecurities, doubts, fears, so on and so forth. But when you see the being as you, fully, and you know it through having merged with the being, all you're doing is, in a sense, speaking your heart. And that is how you can very quickly access the channeling state.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of clarifies some things that I had stuck on, because I still felt this sense of, like you said, like doubt or insecurity about what was happening, or like thoughts that it wasn't going to work. And like this idea of it, that separateness, I think, is something I had trouble getting over. And I think what you gave will help with that. So.
Well, we're happy to share it. Have fun playing with some of these new tools.
Yes, absolutely. Something I asked about before in our previous session as well, that I still don't fully understand. Can you explain more about how synchronicities are invitations? To me, a synchronicity is just something that happens at the same time between two unrelated things. How can that possibly, it's just something I notice. How can that be an invitation to do something else?
All right. Well, understand, when you see a synchronicity, what you're seeing is, yes, a recognition that two seemingly unrelated things are connected. But what you're also receiving is a symbol, because what you'll notice, each synchronicity you see is different. They're not all identical. There's infinite different forms synchronicity takes. Because the synchronicity takes a form, it has assumed a symbolic nature, because all forms are symbols. All forms.
Okay.
What you see as a human, for example, is a symbol of what you call the microcosm, because you all contain the infinite within you. The infinite being the macrocosm, yourselves being the microcosm. So your human form is a symbol. Anything is a symbol. Anything with a form that you can perceive is symbolic. So recognize that symbols do not have one fixed meaning at all. A symbol is multidimensional. It is capable of reflecting back to you many different things, many different things. So what you will find is through meditation upon a certain synchronicity, you can begin to translate the different symbolic meanings that it is communicating to you, or rather that you are communicating to yourself through the synchronicity.
Can I give an example here so I can get some clarification?
One moment. Let us finish this and then absolutely.
Sure.
So seeing the different symbolic representations of the synchronicity allow for you to determine which symbolic meaning resonates the most with you. You may notice some meanings you create from the symbol don't really align with your preference. You may notice other meanings that you create from seeing that symbol do represent your preference. And in that moment, you're given a choice. Do you prefer to relate to the symbol in a negative way? Or do you prefer to relate to it in a positive way? That's the invitation. You're actually being invited towards both because the universe truly doesn't care which you pick. It will utilize positive and negative in a loving, efficacious way. So you're being invited to explore through synchronicity by creating your own symbolic understanding of what that synchronicity means to you. And that is the invitation to step into the reality that represents your positive interpretation of that symbol that is the synchronicity.
Okay, that actually clarifies, and I don't need to give the example anymore. That perfectly cleared it up. And I see how some of them I consider relatively meaningless. I don't really consider any of them to be negative. I try to take everything in a positive light, but there's definitely some that have come my way where I'm like, that's a positive, like so-called sign from the universe or something along those lines. And I use those, I thought, to my advantage, and it's good to know that that's what's going on. So
exactly, you're accepting the positive invitation.
Cool. Another thing that the Bashar has talked about in the past, something that I found very interesting that resonated with me, was the sacred circuitry, saying that it was a gift from the Sasani to us, that it had been gifted to you by another civilization previously. And I did the meditation for a few days, 3 or 4 days. Bashar recommended minimum 3 days. So I think I did it for 4 days. I didn't really notice anything happening. And there was a being called the facilitator, I believe, from the Sasani that had said you would find yourself from time to time or find yourself from place to place. And I thought that I might experience time lapses or something along those lines, but nothing really seemed to happen. Do I just need to do it longer? Are my expectations out of line here? What?
Well, the idea is to perhaps create your own way of relating to the technique provided. So remember, different techniques will work differently for different people. So perhaps a modification or a tweaking of the technique may serve you. You recall what we mentioned about the guide, internalizing the guide through seeing them as light and breathing them in.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that with all of these sacred circuits. You can do that with anything that you wish to internalize. So if you wish to really deepen your connection with these symbols, while lightly gazing upon them, you can become aware of the mid-eyebrow point, the third eye point. You can even bring your hands into the equation and see the symbol as glowing with light. Inhale, breathe it in. Consume, eat the symbol. So you can break it down and assimilate it energetically, and this will then allow for the symbol to become a living part of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I had just been kind of staring at them and waiting for something to happen. So I think tweaking that technique will definitely be useful here. I like the idea of breathing things in as light and kind of internalizing them is resonating with me. So I will be using that for a lot of things. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
This is just an idle curiosity of mine, a question I've wanted to ask. Are airplanes just a permission slip for human flight?
Essentially, yes. There are also permission slips and symbols for many other things, but yes, that is one of them. Okay,
cool. This is something that's kind of bothered me and my wife. I've talked about it with my wife, and she told me to ask this today, so I'm going to ask this for her.
Right.
Why do the Sasani, why do you, Ryok, or the Bashar not just give the channel a list of like physics equations that would change and revolutionize physics as we know it. It seems like it'd be something very simple to do that would help us on our evolutionary path.
Well,
Why not give those type
understand,
of gifts?
the reason we don't share those things literally is for a couple of reasons. The first reason is our species does not utilize number values in relationship to our understandings of the universe. We utilize geometries and geometric patterns. We see things in a symbolic way, in an underlying way that, in a sense, is an octave higher than your mathematical understandings and interpretations of these things. So we operate utilizing a different system of understanding than your people. With that being said, in order for us to take those symbolic geometric understandings and to then translate them into technical physics requires the channel to be fluent in that, which he is not. That's one reason. The other reasons are that, in a sense, it's not necessarily our place to give that to you in the way that you are describing. For understand, a part of your species awakening and remembering is your species uncovering these things, which is beginning to happen. There are different scientists on your world that have 1 foot in what you would call the mainstream, 1 foot in what you would call the spirit world, and they are blending these things, and many of them are gaining popularity. So recognize that over time, these things will become more and more obvious to your people. And at a certain point in your species development, and this will be something that parallels the open contact phenomenon, at a certain point, what you will find is your species will then be vibrationally ready to receive from us and others some of these advanced mathematical interpretations of these underlying fundamental levels. What's required for us to share those things with your scientific community is for your scientific community to raise their frequency so they can resonate more with us, and that's what can allow for the information transfer. The information transfer may not be channeled. It may be something that occurs within the dream world of the different scientists. Understand as well, some of these things are being given now by other species to scientists on your world while they are in meditative states, while they are in dream states, while they are in inspired states. And they will say, oh, wow, I just had a unique idea. And they did. However, what they may not realize is that idea is also connected to an extraterrestrial being who has a vested interest in that information being disseminated. So a part of it is about the channel before you and his intellectual fluency. A part of it is about your species' readiness to receive that information very overtly. And another part of it has to do with our relationship to your people and the specific role that we play. Other beings play different roles. And some of those beings play roles that are very scientific, and they are the ones that are sharing many of these insights with your scientists, particularly the ones whom are really blending the idea of your physical sciences with what you would consider to be esoteric and energetic understandings of your universe and beyond.
Okay, cool. And that was kind of some of the stuff I thought, some of the way I thought you might answer that. But I kind of just wanted clarification on that because my wife doesn't believe in a lot of this stuff and I do. And so we're kind of at odds there occasionally.
Well, if an individual is ever wondering, does this information work or is it all nonsense? Apply the information and see what happens.
Which is what I've been doing, and I've been seeing some positive effects myself. So
exactly. Here's the thing to keep in mind. If an individual is committed to the belief that this information will not work, and they then attempt to use this information, they may get what we call a mixed bag effect. They'll get some of the effects that we have described, but they may also create limitation in relationship to their ability to receive those effects. And for many individuals, when they see that limitation, they will say, oh, look, I knew it. It didn't really work. It didn't really do what it was described to do. The key is to suspend the belief system and allow for yourself to buy into the concept that these things can work for you, because that's what allows for them to work, because nothing is outside of your belief system. That's what directs everything. It directs your attention, it directs your actions, it directs what you will allow and what you will disallow. So ensure that if you experiment with what we suggest, you allow for yourself to really buy into the idea that these things can work for you. Because the things you're choosing now are things you have believed will work for you. And that's why they work.
It's just all in my head, right?
Well, that's a bit of an outdated way of looking at it, because in a sense, what is in your head is your brain. What represents your consciousness, which is not local to your brain,
right,
is where the belief systems begin to form patterns that then determine how your reality unfolds. That's not really taking place in the brain. That type of belief system configuration, which takes place in your consciousness, is then translated by the brain.
Right, I'm aware.
Through it.
I was making an oversimplification.
That's all right. We're only sharing that specifically to emphasize that there are many different ways of looking at the situation. And of course, we appreciate the reference to it all being in your head.
All right. I have one more question, and we're kind of perfectly on time here. What is your favorite thing about humanity? Can you share that?
The stories. For myself, that is what is quite exciting in relationship to how I experience your people. Because we are genetic relatives, I have access to what you would consider to be the Akashic record, let's just say, of your people. And when I go within and I scan into my own quasi-physical genetics, it is like I am in a library. And I can open whatever book I am most inspired to open, and it reveals to me a great deal of information relevant to things known and unknown about your people. There are some things, of course, I am not permitted to see for different reasons, but there are many things I can see. And as your species raises its frequency, I'm able to perceive more. And as I perceive more, I then translate that information in a way that is of service to your people, and that information is then given through the channel to you all as a form of reflection, representing you all awakening the same knowledge and information within yourselves.
It's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys in the next, 10, 20 years. So
yes, well, remember,
officially, physically.
Look within and also look into your night skies. There are many craft around you already. Many craft utilize vibrational cloaking technologies. As you begin to resonate with the extraterrestrial frequencies, you will begin to notice the cloaking technologies. It will seem as if there's something overlaying in slight ways the night sky. As you stabilize the extraterrestrial frequencies more and more and more, the crafts will begin to appear. We are already here.
Yeah, I saw one ship relatively recently where it appeared, it disappeared, appeared in a new location, then disappeared. Broad daylight, bright blue skies, and it just kind of confirmed for me, everything that I've experienced thus far. So
yeah,
it was very cool.
Thank you for sharing that. And remember, when these things show up, just as you had mentioned with synchronicity, you're being invited. So have fun with that.
Yeah, there was one other thing that actually really resonated with me was I think it was the Bashar had done an exercise. It was called the invitation. Oh no, it was the promise, and it was imagining the tic tac shape landing in an open area and like you walking up and feeling the ship, and I actually got very emotional at something like that, and it surprised me, but it was really interesting it felt like I was remembering the promise. Not that it was being told to me, but that I was actually actively remembering it. It was very cool.
Precisely. These types of visualizations are designed to awaken within your, let's just say, energetic and genetic memory, contact experiences that you have already had.
Very cool. All right, Ryok, I think that's our time right there. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Appreciate
of
it.
course. Our species' unconditional love and appreciation to you and all members of their human family. Good day.
Good day.
All right.
Hey, it got pretty dark on my end. I just
right?
looked at my own camera. I just saw how dark it was.
Yeah, right. Shifted to a new parallel reality.
Yeah. No, that was really good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely, man. You're so welcome. And I just wanted to say too, I really